It's news time. We're continuing the marathon, and greetings to all our viewers. Russian troops continue to actively assault the positions of the defense forces. Since the beginning of the day, 84 combat clashes have been recorded. The border areas of Chernihiv and Sumy regions have once again suffered from artillery shelling from the territory of the Russian Federation. This was reported by our general staff. The most difficult situation right now is in the Pokrovsk direction. Specifically there, the enemy has made 24 attempts to break through since the beginning of the day. This is the highest number among all directions. Ukrainian forces have already repelled 17 of these attacks, but the fighting continues. The situation is also tense in the Kostiantynivka and southern Slobozhansky directions. It is now almost impossible to imagine modern warfare without them. Machines that help save as many of our soldiers' lives as possible. The next segment is about the work of the ground robotic systems company of the NGU Rubish Brigade. These drones are actively used for logistics missions, evacuations, rescuing the wounded, and even for destroying the enemy. Our Yehor Romaklo found out exactly how when he visited one of the workshops. Currently, the unit is increasing its capabilities and experimenting with equipment modifications. They really need our support. So you will see a QR code and a card number, which you can use to support Rubizh's fundraiser for a set of Luchi for the drones. Buddy.
Get down. I can't see anything. You're blocking my camera. The camera. Lie on top of each other. That's the best option.
Evacuating the wounded, delivering supplies, ammunition, and even carrying out combat missions. Today, ground robotic systems, or GRS, are already an integral part of the Russian-Ukrainian war. This field is also being actively developed by the NGU Rubish Brigade. Evhen, an engineer from the GRS company, is preparing one of the machines for a combat mission. Its task is to destroy Russians. This is
the kamikaze drone for remotely detonating specific targets that need to be destroyed.
This option is, of course, much safer than sending in a team of sappers to carry out the demolition. But before this machine is loaded with explosives and sent to the occupiers, it needs to be thoroughly upgraded. After all, a drone that has just arrived from the manufacturer is not ready for the challenges of the Pokrovsk direction, which is currently being defended by the soldiers of the Rubish Brigade.
There is a lot that needs to be improved. As you can see for yourself, everything is removed and replaced with something else, because each manufacturer adapts the drone to their own software, according to their own vision.
Yevhen himself joined the NRC company a year ago. During this time, he says he has come to clearly understand the importance of the work he is doing. There's plenty of motivation to work 24/7.
When you realize that what you've done has completed its mission, evacuated a wounded soldier, or retrieved the bodies of fallen comrades, or delivered supplies, and you understand that this little machine accomplished the mission. I would put it this way, just one successful mission already justifies itself.
Most often, NRKs are used on the front line specifically for logistics missions. After all, the enemy's tactics are aimed at cutting off all supply routes to our units, says the NRK company commander. With the call sign Private, Ghost.
The gray zone is expanding and the opportunity to drive in with a pickup or armored vehicle is becoming less and less, putting us at greater risk. There are a lot of personnel involved during these missions, but when the NRK does it, only the NRK itself is at risk, and that's just machinery.
Despite the very rapid development of the NRK field, there is still plenty of room for improvement. In particular, standardization of the systems is very much needed, says Privid. After all, there are already dozens of manufacturers in Ukraine, and each offers their own solutions. At the front, everything has to be adapted to the realities of war.
All NRKs need to be switched to digital communication as much as possible. Plus, there should be unification and standardization of batteries and charging stations. This greatly simplifies the work, and there are many different types of NRKs.
To support the brigade's ground robotic systems unit, you can donate using the QR code and the card number you see on the screen. Right now, the guys are raising funds for equipment and components for the NRKs. So join in. From Donetsk region, Yehor Romaklo, Dmytro Matvienko, and Serhiy Marchenko, Facts ICTV, United News.
Continued military support for Ukraine and effective sanctions are the key to changing Putin's calculations, according to NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte. He stated this ahead of the meeting of the alliance's foreign ministers. He emphasized that if peace talks reach a dead end, it is necessary to strengthen measures, pressure on Russia through sustained military assistance to Ukraine and new sanctions against Moscow. According to the Secretary General, since August, NATO allies have spent €4 billion on purchasing American weapons for Ukraine as part of the PERN program. $1 billion each month. The same trend will continue next year. But there is no upper limit. More contributions mean more weapons for the Ukrainian army. The priority is missiles and other critically important systems for Ukraine's air defense. Meanwhile, allies are already announcing new contributions. Norway is adding another $500 million for the purchase of American weapons for the armed forces of Ukraine. In other words, it will essentially cover half of the alliance's total contributions on its own. In December, Canada is increasing its contribution to almost $900 million. Germany is also allocating an additional $200 million for American weapons and ammunition. And separately, it is adding €25 million to the NATO Trust Fund for winter equipment and medical supplies. Meanwhile, Britain is allocating another £10 million for the restoration of Ukraine's energy sector.
It is necessary to make sure that the Russians understand the rapid flow of weapons to Ukraine will continue. This is exactly what is happening today, thanks to the United States, thanks to the Europeans. The US is sending its critically important equipment to Ukraine, paid for by Canada and European allies. But countries are also providing a lot themselves, based on bilateral agreements with Ukraine.
The talks between Putin and American envoys in Moscow ended the day before without results. They discussed a peace plan to end Russia's war in Ukraine. However, after a 5-hour discussion, the U.S. President's special envoy, Donald Trump's representative Steve Witkoff, and Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, did not approach the journalists and immediately flew from the Russian capital to Washington.
5 hours of negotiations and zero results. That's how yesterday's meeting in Moscow between Putin and the representatives of the American president, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, ended. It started 2.5 hours later than scheduled. So Putin's special representative, Kirill Dmitriev, had to entertain the guests in the Russian capital, including taking them out to a restaurant, while Putin himself was speaking at an investment forum. When the negotiations finally began, who was at the table? On the Russian side, there were Putin, his advisor Ushakov, and Dmitriev. On the American side, there were Witkoff and Kushner. Each side had its own interpreter. When the lengthy conversation ended, the Americans did not speak to the journalists. They stopped by the American embassy, apparently to call U.S. President Donald Trump, and then immediately left Moscow. Ushakov came out to speak to the press. He stated that there is no compromise option, no plan for resolving the situation in Ukraine.
We did not engage in discussions regarding specific wording or concrete American proposals, but rather focused on the fundamental essence of what is comprehensively contained within these significant American documents. There were indeed some aspects with which we could readily agree, and the President himself unequivocally confirmed this particular point. Conversely, some other matters drew our considerable criticism, and the President did not in any way conceal our firmly held position either. Our attitude toward a number of proposals was critical and even differed.
Before starting negotiations with the Americans, Putin lashed out at the Europeans. He claimed that they were allegedly sabotaging the peace process. Obviously, this was his way of shifting the blame for the failure of the peace process, since he already knew he would not make any compromises. During the meeting at the Kremlin, Putin continues to demand Ukraine's capitulation, so he stated that the Europeans are on the side of war. And even when they supposedly tried to make some changes to Trump's proposal, all these changes are aimed at just one thing: to completely block the peace process by putting forward demands that are absolutely unacceptable to Russia. And according to Putin, they do this in order to blame Russia for the collapse of the peace process. At the same time, the Russian dictator declared that he is indeed ready to fight against European countries and once again hinted at nuclear weapons.
We are not going to fight with Europe. I've already said this 100 times. But if Europe suddenly wants to fight us and starts, we are ready right now. With Ukraine, we are acting in a surgical, precise manner there. Right? So that, well, you understand, right? This is not a war in the direct modern sense of the word. If Europe suddenly wants to start a war with us and actually does, then the situation could very quickly develop to the point where there will be no one left for us to negotiate with.
U.S. President Donald Trump has not yet commented on the situation regarding the negotiations. While the meeting was taking place in Moscow, he was holding a cabinet meeting where, among other things, they also discussed Ukraine. Trump once again repeated that the war would not have started if he were in office, that he ended 8 wars, and once again boasted that America no longer spends money on this, only sells weapons to NATO. They are trying to resolve Ukrainian-Russian issues, although the matter of ending the war in Ukraine is not easy and, as he put it, chaotic.
America is strong and respected again. On the world stage, we are truly respected. In fact, I was at the NATO meeting and they called me the President of Europe. As you know, we have a problem with the war, which our people, right now, they're trying to resolve it with Russia and Ukraine. We are no longer participating in the war financially. Biden handed out $350 billion like candy. That's a huge amount of money.
After the meeting, Secretary Marco Rubio told Fox News that he considers the key point of contention in the peace plan negotiations. According to him, Ukraine and Russia are now literally fighting over territory, within 30 to 50 kilometers, and for those 20% of Donetsk region that remain under Ukrainian control. The American side is trying to find out what the Ukrainians might agree to and what would provide them with security guarantees for the future so that Ukraine would never again face an invasion. And what would allow Ukrainians not just to rebuild their economy but to thrive. Theoretically, if everything is done right, in 10 years, Ukraine's GDP could be larger than Russia's, according to the Secretary of State. He acknowledged the courage of Ukrainians in resisting the Russian onslaught, but emphasized that now this is a war of attrition in which Russia spares no human lives to achieve its goals. The United States, according to the Secretary of State, is trying to determine whether it is possible to end the war. Yes, thank you. To protect the future of Ukraine, and so that both sides can fully concur to it.